Hey everyone, so I've been having a few problems and I built this rig a couple of weeks ago actually, and I actually ran out of time to get it filled up, but it was probably kind of good that I did run out of time in reality, because I've been trying to leak test it on and off ever since. So I bought one of the EK pressure testers, and effectively what you do is you plug that into your water-cooled system before you put liquid into it, and you pump it up to 0.5, 0.6 bar, and then if the air escapes, you know that water can get out. Now, the general consensus or rule of thumb is, if it doesn't leak for 2 or 3 hours, then you're normally going to be okay. Normally, maybe, but in my case, not so much, because if I leave it for 2 or 3 hours, it's actually fine and doesn't leak any air at all, or pressure. But if I leave it overnight, it starts to go down, and then once it started to go down, it seems to kind of speed up, and I've not been able to work out what it is. So I'm going to do a bit quick time lapse, just so that we can have a look at the air drop off. And I've been and found an old, well, not an old watch, but a watch with an actual hand on it, so during the time lapse we can see things change. And also because we're going to be watching on the pressure gauge to see that drop off. Now, my only choice after doing this bit of B-roll, which we're going to have to leave for quite a while, although I'll speed it up so it'll just be a few seconds of your precious time, is I'm going to have to take it apart. And the only thing I can think is checking every fitting, try and make sure that all the seats have been filed nicely, and effectively I'm going to have to take apart all of the hard line and effectively just go over it again bit by bit. But at least I'm not going to be getting wet hands. But as you can see, the EK pressure tester is basically just over 0.25 bar. It was just over 0.5 bar yesterday morning. So effectively now I need to get it pumped up, and then we'll see how long it actually takes to drop off. And this is annoying even me now, so don't worry about it.
I just realized I've built walls a mile high to protect my heart, but now I'm all alone, stuck on the inside. The heart doesn't need a castle, it needs a bridge. Been too scared that I'd unravel. Brick by brick, I built these walls. Now I know that I am strong. Just watch me tear them down. I'm gonna tear them down. If it couldn't break your heart, is it really love? If it can't tear you apart, is it really love? Just watch me march towards the battle. I'm gonna tear down this castle. I'm gonna tear down this castle. I'm gonna tear down this castle. Watch me march. If it couldn't break your heart, is it really love? If it can't tear you apart, is it really love?
So it was at this point, after 2 days of completely sat there with it pressurised, and you can see it has dropped some pressure, but not a great deal. But enough that there is a possibility, or when we know there's a leak somewhere. I've checked some of what I would call the more precarious fittings, just because of the angles and being able to push them in, and I couldn't see anything necessarily wrong. So at this point I would have been putting clear coolant in, or maybe a very off-white kind of cloudy coolant, to have worked with the possibilities of them being able to change the lighting inside the case to do whatever you liked. But instead of that, I'm going to put red in. And the reason why I'm going to put red in is so that I can find the leak. And then after I found the leak, if I want to, I can remove the coolant, flush it out and fit the normal one in. Kind of like what we would have done in the olden days. And in the olden days we would have been using well, I never used UV coolant because I was never too keen on it, but we would have easily been able to have found our problem because of the colour in the coolant. Ignore the hands, it's just because I have been busy doing DIY in the evenings on my cars. Now, am I going to be able to screw this all the way in? I'm not sure. So I'm just fitting a white ball valve at the moment, and we are open, so I want that closed off. And this is just so, that top's not very good. This is just so I have the option of draining it later on. Corsair don't do a white one, so this is another brand I've had to buy. But we have a drain line so that we can flush it all out later on, put some deionised water through, and then now, red was some coolant I had left over from a project a while ago. If you've bought clear coolant, it would work out cheaper for you to just buy some dye, and you can drop the dye into your clear coolant. Obviously then you still have to flush it out later on. So I have to fill up here, get a fair amount of coolant in the actual distro, and then I can turn it on, because you don't want to run it dry. I do have the system shorted, so as you can see we have coolant, very coloured. Now I'm not seeing any leakage, but then again we're only looking at the front so far. Okay, so I'm going to flick the switch around the back of the power supply. All the fans will come on as well. But eventually so will the pump. Okay, so it has been a tiring time, and you wouldn't believe the gaps between a lot of these videos, but it turns out that there is a specific way to loop it if you're just going to have one in and one out. And I've had to move this was going to be my what I will call my output from the loop, but the input to the distro res, and the coolant was meant to have come out the top. Well, because I've moved both of these ports down one now, the coolant now comes out of this one and gets returned from the top. Now this is what Corsair have told me to do. Sadly, this wasn't anywhere online, so I wasn't actually aware of it, because I did have the ports wired correctly, but they did say that you had the ports wired correctly, but you kind of need to use it as a distro plate, so you actually have your CPU, your GPU in and outs as kind of separate loops, and it will look that better that way anyway. But we're actually back at the point of me trying to fill it again.
I criticized myself for trusting lies. I know I can't hide, 'cause then I'd be alone, stuck on the inside. The heart doesn't need a castle, it needs a bridge. Been too scared that I'd unravel. Brick by brick, I built these walls. Now I know that I'm enough. Just watch me tear them down. I'm gonna tear them down. If it couldn't break your heart, is it really love? If it can't tear you apart, is it really love? Just watch me march towards the battle. I'm gonna tear down this castle. I'm gonna tear down this castle. I'm gonna tear down this castle. Watch me march. If it couldn't break your heart, is it really love?
Okay, so we've made it to the end. The system has coolant in it, it's pumping well, there is an actual loop going on, it's all leak tested and it didn't leak. So all of that stuff before it didn't leak could have actually been because of maybe a pressure equalisation within the distribution plate itself, because it wasn't really distributing properly. Now, I will say I'm a bit miffed because I have scoured like the Corsair website, and at no point does it say if you're only going to use a single loop, do you have to use one specific side or send it all the way around, which I was a little bit upset about, because it was one of the things I specifically wanted to do, was not have all of the hoses going in and out, because effectively I was trying to do it in an old school way and have very minimal hosing visible. So I was still trying to do hardline, but I was trying to do hardline in a soft tube kind of manner. Now, this is my first hardline build, and I will be honest with you, I am not happy with it. There is the section down here for the graphics card, because I've moved it down and I was trying to save time. It's now sits on the wonk a little bit, so in reality what I need to do is drain the system, add a little extender in for the down portion so I can get it perfectly level. But because I've now seen that one, there's also one at the top up here, and there's actually a couple of those needs to be changed. And that's because I would like it to be very symmetrical and 90 degrees. Other than that, there is a huge elephant in the room, and that would be the black graphics card. Now, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to keep coming back to this system and doing little mods like you may do at home. So yes, I do need to drain it, and also, if I'm completely honest, I want to change the coolant, because I'm probably going to put something white or off-white in there, and then be able to change the lighting a little bit better. Now, I've put it on white OC3D mode, because in reality the white and the red for me works well, but I know like those of you at home probably aren't going to want to do that. Now, I was looking for the pastel here, but I can't actually find it, which is going to be really annoying, which means I have to change everything. But I do really like the pastel mode that it can do. And the other thing that has really wound me up, and again, it's not any fault of Corsair, but it's the 6 fans for the radiators are connected to IQ, and I've got them on a 0 RPM mode. But then the rear fan I've had to plug into the motherboard because there wasn't enough headers on everything else, and that one always wants to spin, and it means I now have to install AI Suite from Asus, and it's just more and more things that I need to install to get things working. Like I had to install Aura to be able to get the motherboard to change colour and things like that. So it's little things, and it's kind of fine tuning, but this may give us plenty of stuff to talk about in the future. Other thing with the distro plates, because I've not used all of them, it doesn't fill the front up. So it is very much like a separate chamber thing rather than a big reservoir. And it would have been nice if there was some way that maybe they were linked together so that it could still be filled if you weren't using all of them. But that's just me being picky. I'm always going to be the guy that finds problems with stuff, and sadly that's because I don't do things the easy way. As you've seen with this, because it was incredibly difficult, and you wouldn't have believed how much time I spent in between the videos while it was doing. The B-roll alone, even though it was done with a time lapse, in total there's about 48 hours of B-roll with you know, me bleed checking it and watching the clock for the time for the pressure to drop. And the reason why I filmed all of it is because I wanted to see whether it was a slow drop or whether it was a big and it was coming down in a big step, like there was something failing and then sort of like letting air out and then coming back in again, almost like you've pressed a valve or something. So I learned a lot from this, and I actually really enjoyed doing it. Not quite sure how you guys are going to end up absorbing the content at home, because it's not the big flashy things that you normally would see. It's someone pulling their hair out and trying to find a problem, which may either frustrate you or be like, oh yeah, I want to know what he does at the end of this. So I would very much like to hear your feedback underneath. So won't be staying with red coolant, although because it is a bit limiting and it would be nice to be able to theme it slightly differently. And I am going to have to paint the graphics card, so we'll do something on that, because that's obviously something that would scare a lot of people. And yeah, then do some tweaks with the loop so that we can get things all nice and symmetrical and more eye-pleasing. But we got there in the end, other than the fact I do need to replace the glue on the light, well, the LEDs down here. And I did that because in reality, I think the case probably, considering it had so many other RGBs in it, highlighting the power supply, I think should have been done as well. So I put a little white LED strip in here just to light up the fact that I had a white power supply in there as well. But it keeps unsticking because the glue's not very nice, so I need to put some of my magic foam tape down there to be able to take care of it. Anyway, I will put a spec list underneath, including the white MSI monitor that I'm using. It has been here for ages. I have done a review on it, but because white system, white keyboard, white mouse, I thought I'd put it in there. Yes, the background is a bit bland, but it's because I haven't really used this area before. And not that you can see it, but this is my Corsair 1000D beer fridge, which I used to hold the desk up, because why not? Anyway, for want of a better term, no, why do I need to say that? Anyway, I need to get going. I've spent far too long in this video because I wasn't going to give up. And that would be the thing that I would leave you with at the end of quite a long video. If you sat through it, you never give up. So you get what I'm going to say. So if you have problems with your system like this, don't get stressed out. Just take a deep breath and start working through things methodically. And if not, just make sure that you haven't got any big open windows near you, because there was a few times this nearly ended up out of it. But I'm glad I persevered, and we got an incredibly pretty looking system out of it. It took me so long though. Not sure if they'll let me do another one for a while. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you can laugh at my frustration. But if you do laugh at my frustration and then that helps you out in the future, then this video wasn't done completely in vain. But for now at least, this is the tiniest one with another video for you out. Love you, sis.